Hello and welcome back to another edition of Bite-Sized Kierkegaard. If you're joining me for the first time, click on the link below to see a proper introduction to this whole series. Otherwise, I'll get right on with it, starting with today's bookmark. If it will focus here, there we go. Lake Tahoe. So my grandma had apparently visited Lake Tahoe. The interesting thing about this, I've been to this exact location. It's a little turnout. There's actually a little ferry that goes right through there. I got a pretty decent photo of myself that I was happy with, and that's one of the few photos I actually sold. It was, it appeared in the New York Times. I think just the online version, not the print version. So, but it looked very similar to this. It turns out to be that same location. So that was kind of interesting to dig into the bookmark collection and see that familiar site. But getting right into it. So today we're getting into probably the most famous of Kierkegaard's works in the current times. I think in his own time, probably he was most known for Either Or. Either Or is still it still has a pretty significant influence in the culture today. But in terms of what Kierkegaard is really remembered for, I think is this Fear and Trembling. So this is it. This is a challenging work, and I, to be honest, when I read this for the first time in college, I was not a fan of this, and I mean it's a challenging work, and I was not a fan for a few reasons because I was pretty heavily into Christian apologetics at the time, and I think I still need to revisit that. I think there's a lot that can be explained through reason, but I just did not like this sort of mystic turn where everything is sort of attributed to faith. I did not like that was the term that this book is saying, and I there was a lot of issues with that when you think about that rationally, and you try to take a rational approach to the world, and then you have this sort of book that says like, no, this is a paradox and we just need to trust faith. Like it was challenging, and I did not like that sort of thing. So we'll sort of discuss that as we go through the next few videos where I'll be discussing Fear and Trembling. But reading it recently now, I think I understand it better, and I understand its place, and I think there might still be room in the world, not in Kierkegaard's world, but I think maybe at the same time for other things that could be maybe rationally explained, and sort of the Christian apologetics approach. Anyway, a little bit of a tangent there. I'll just get right into it. If you're not familiar with the biblical story, Abraham, what was sort of the granddad of all granddads of many of our religions, right? That we call them the Abrahamic traditions. So I do recommend, I'm not going to do justice to this, I do recommend figuring that on your own and researching that. He's a pretty important guy, to put it lightly. And this story is kind of a shocking, and as the pseudonymous author in here says, even an abhorrent sort of situation that he's trying to understand, and he doesn't really like this. But so Abraham had a son very late in his life. They thought that his wife and him didn't think that they were going to have a son or have a child, but they had a son. So that means they have descendants that are going to populate the whole world, right? So this the son is pretty significant. And the son's name is Isaac, right? So the son is sort of like the promise that, like, yeah, you'll be the father of all these traditions and all these folks coming down the line. You need a child for that, right? But for the longest time they didn't have that child, so it's kind of a joke, right? Why were you promised to be like the granddad of all these folks, like, when you don't even have a kid? So it's a big thing to have Isaac, and later in life, right? But the shocking thing comes when God is testing Abraham's faith, actually, and says, well, I'm asking you to now sacrifice your son. This is the world of the Old Testament. This is the world of these grain offerings and also animal offerings to God. And also at the time, the other religions had the same sort of thing going on. And so, but this was a request not for an animal, not for grain, but for your son and your precious son who was promised to you, and now I'm going to take him away. Like, I'm really testing you, Abraham. So it's a challenging event. And what are we to make of this? So the author, the pseudonymous author of this, is sort of taking this and saying, I don't understand Abraham, what Abraham is doing here. I can't get into his head. I can't think about this rationally. And I know we live in an age of Hegelianism, and everything can be understood through the system, and everyone's sort of trying to outdo each other and everything. But like, I'm struggling with this thing that happened so long ago, before all this advancement in the latest philosophy and sciences and things like that. I'm still struggling with this thing that happened so long ago, right? That, what is this faith thing, and what does this mean? And I don't understand this. And so that is sort of like the theme of the book. Like, it doesn't, there's no understanding to be had here, is the struggle here. And yeah, we'll see that. So I'm going to get into it. So these are some initial attempts. These are 4 sort of approaches at trying to understand what's going on here. And we'll see that all of these kind of fail because they're trying to use reason to understand the story. But I'll do a lot of reading this time, so please bear with me. But I think it's worth it for this video, and some of my comments at the end of every section here. Starting with the quote from the Bible. And God tempted Abraham and said to him, Take Isaac, your only son, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on a mountain that I shall show you. And then getting right into it here, the interpretation is from this passage, this small passage. This is one of the interpretations. It was early in the morning when Abraham rose, had the asses saddled, and left his tent, taking Isaac with him. But Sarah watched them from the window as they went down the valley until she could see them no longer. They rode in silence for 3 days. On the morning of the 4th day, Abraham said not a word, but raised his eyes and saw Mount Moriah in the distance. He left the young servants behind, and taking Isaac's hand, went up the mountain alone. But Abraham said to himself, I will not hide from Isaac where this walk is taking him. He stood still. He laid his hand on Isaac's head in blessing, and Isaac kneeled to receive it. And Abraham's face epitomized fatherliness. His gaze was gentle, his words admonishing, but Isaac could not understand him. His soul could not be uplifted. He clasped Abraham's knees, he pleaded at his feet, he begged for his young life, for his beautiful hopes. He called to mind the joy in Abraham's house. He called to mind the sorrow and the solitude. Then Abraham lifted the boy up and walked on, holding his hand, and his words were full of comfort and admonition. But Isaac could not understand him. Abraham climbed Mount Moriah, but Isaac did not understand him. Then Abraham turned away from him for a moment, but when Isaac saw Abraham's face again, it had changed. His gaze was wild. His whole being was sheer terror. He seized Isaac by the chest, threw him to the ground, and said, Stupid boy, do you think I am your father? I am an idolater. Do you think it is God's command? No, it is my desire. Then Isaac trembled and cried out in anguish, God in heaven, have mercy on me. God of Abraham, have mercy on me. I have no father on earth, then you be my father. If I have no father on earth, then you be my father. But Abraham said softly to himself, Lord God in heaven, I thank you. It is better that he believes me a monster, that he should lose faith in you. When the child is to be weaned, the mother blackened her breasts. It would be hard to have the breast looking inviting when the child must not have it. So the child believes that the breast has changed, but the mother, she is still the same. Her gaze is tender and loving as ever. How fortunate the one who did not need more terrible means to wean the child. So we see here, this is one interpretation, but it's not really intellectually satisfying. It's an interpretation of, okay, this may have been the words left unsaid in the Bible, but if this is the interpretation, this is kind of a weird teaching, is this really what happened? Like, why would this be what happened? What is the lesson for people to take from this, that you should hide things from your children to protect them from the truth? Like, that doesn't seem very satisfying. It's essentially what's happening here. Like, Abraham's thinking, well, I've been commanded to sacrifice my son. The world's going to see this as insanity, so I'm just going to go along with it, and I'm going to become this monster to create this illusion. So Isaac in the end doesn't lose faith in God. It's better for me to be thought of and imagined as a monster, not just in front of Isaac. I think in front of society in general. That's going to be a theme that we're going to discuss later on, that indeed they're trying to interpret these actions, and the pseudonymous author, it just looks like Abraham is a monster. He's crazy. He's got some problem. Maybe he's mentally deranged. I mean, that's the rational interpretation, right? That could be something that's going on, but that is weird. That's not the message that's trying to be taught here. So so this seems not satisfying and purposeful. It's purposefully not satisfying. So that's thus the reason for the second interpretation here, which I'll start with here. It was early in the morning when Abraham arose. He embraced Sarah, the bride of his old age, and Sarah kissed Isaac, who took away her disgrace, Isaac her pride, her hope for all the generations to come. They rode along the road in silence, and Abraham stared continuously and fixedly at the ground until the fourth day, when he looked up and saw Mount Moriah far away. But once again he turned his eyes toward the ground. Silently he arranged the firewood and bound Isaac. Silently he drew the knife. Then he saw the ram that God had selected. This he sacrificed and went home. From that day henceforth Abraham was old. He could not forget that God had ordered him to do this. Isaac flourished as before, but Abraham's eyes were darkened, and he saw joy no more. When the child has grown big and is to be weaned, the mother virginally conceals her breast, and then the child no longer has a mother. How fortunate the child who has not lost his mother in some other way. So again, this is another interpretation. The interpretation is, okay, Abraham is good, he's diligent, he does what God asks of him, which seems to satisfy the teaching for the Bible. But there's this dissatisfying thing, because it's like, when you think about it, someone who's gone through this ordeal is going to lose some joy in life. And indeed, it's exaggerated here, but it says, Abraham has joy no more, because he's always thinking about, God asked me to do this. It could be years later, but you always have this in the back of your head. You're not going to recover from something like that, right? But that doesn't seem satisfying too. How could that be the biblical teaching, that when God asks you to sacrifice something, or tests you like that you go along with it, and then you'll sort of never have joy again, and you'll never take part in sort of the world again, right? In Kierkegaard's terms, like, this is the person who makes the first movement of infinite resignation, but doesn't make the second movement of coming back into the world and enjoying the world again, and enjoying the temporal, the earthly pleasures. This is just someone who's just completely lost everything, like, through that resignation, and they're completely changed, and they don't savor what they should be savoring anymore. So this is dissatisfying, because this is a weird teaching again. Like, what would the Bible be trying to teach us? This, that you should never have joy. Like, that doesn't seem right. Something is off there. So it brings us to the third interpretation. It was early in the morning when Abraham arose. He kissed Sarah, the young mother, and Sarah kissed Isaac, her delight, her joy forever. And Abraham rode thoughtfully down the road. He thought of Hagar and the son, whom he drove out into the desert. He climbed Mount Moriah. He drew the knife. It was a quiet evening when Abraham rode out alone, and he rode to Mount Moriah. He threw himself down on his face. He prayed to God to forgive him from his sin, that he had been willing to sacrifice Isaac, that his father had forgotten his duty to his son. He often rode his lonesome road, but he found no peace. He could not comprehend that it was a sin that he had been willing to sacrifice to God. the best that he had, the possession for which he himself would have gladly died many years ago. And if it was a sin, if he had not loved Isaac in this manner, he could not understand that it could not be forgiven. For what more terrible sin was there? When the child is to be weaned, the mother too is not without sorrow, because she and the child are more and more to be separated, because the child who first lay under her heart and later rested upon her breast will never again be so close. So they grieve together the brief sorrow. How fortunate the one who has kept the child so close and did not need to grieve any more. So again, this is kind of a dissatisfying explanation, because it's it's Isaac thinking, or rather it's Abraham thinking, well, this is the explanation, like that, it must be that I've sinned, that I've done something to deserve this. This is him rationalizing, trying to understand, why would God ask this? This is crazy. Like, it must be that I've done something so horrible. Or maybe, there's a bit in there about like me willing to kill my son. Like, is that the sin too? Like, I don't know. Like, it's very confusing. There must be some rational explanation why God would order me this, right? And trying to seek back and think, is it because I've sinned? What have I done to deserve this? But that's not really the message here. The message is, no, Abraham has not sinned. Abraham is being tested by God. And you might think, coming outside of the Bible too, like, this God is kind of weird. Like, why would God be doing this, right? God is just sort of toying with Abraham. Like, what's the point of this? Like, did Abraham do something really bad or something? No. That's the idea with Jonah too, right? It's sort of like, no, Jonah didn't deserve that. This is just something horrible that happened to someone, and it's for the same purpose. It's testing the person's faith. But yeah, the overall message for this third explanation I'm getting is that, well, it's trying to apply reason, and that's where we're failing, because really there's nothing to be reasoned here. There's no, you didn't deserve this, or there's no way to explain this through reasoning. So that's where we're failing with that explanation. So, well, let's take another interpretation. So this is the fourth interpretation here. It was early in the morning, and everything in Abraham's house was ready for the journey. He took leave of Sarah and Eliezer, the faithful servant, accompanying him along the road until he turned back again. They rode along in harmony, Abraham and Isaac, until they came to Mount Moriah. Abraham made everything ready for the sacrifice, calmly and gently, but when he turned away and drew the knife, Isaac saw Abraham's left hand was clenched in despair, that a shudder went through his whole body, but Abraham drew the knife. Then they returned home again, and Sarah hurried to meet them, but Isaac had lost the faith. Not a word is ever said of this in the world, and Isaac never talked to anyone about what he had seen, and Abraham did not suspect that anyone had seen it. When the child is to be weaned, the mother has stronger sustenance at hand, so that the child does not perish. How fortunate the one who has this stronger sustenance at hand. Thus, and in many similar ways, did the man of whom we speak ponder this event. Every time he returned from the pilgrimage to Mount Moriah, he sank down wearily, folded his hands, and said, "No one was as great as Abraham. Who is able to understand him?" So we have this other explanation where, Abraham is carrying out the act, or attempting to, but is visibly shaking and doubting in a way, like, and Isaac sees this, and this causes Isaac to lose his faith in God. So it's the opposite of, what happened in the first one. God, Abraham was pretending he was crazy, so Isaac would keep his faith in God at the very least. He wouldn't. But this one, he's going through with it, but he's showing this weakness and showing that he's doubting in a way, but in a way showing this despair. And I think this is maybe the most real of them, the one that I can imagine. I don't know why exactly. I think for the purpose of the artifice and such, like Isaac loses the faith because he sees that doubting in a sense, sort of visibly, externally. But I think it's probably fair to say Abraham was despairing internally a bit. Like, that seems a reasonable thing to go through. Like, if he was sane, if he's a human being, right? But he has to go through this thing that doesn't make any sense, and he knows God is testing him. But I think there would be some inner despair. But maybe he tried to keep it inside, right? That's what we're going to talk about. Like a lot of this is not visible. It's inner despair, and it can't be something that turns into words. It can't be explained in words and so forth. Yeah, but possibly, yeah. I mean, it kind of asks the question: maybe it can't be explained in words, but it can be shown in that trembling, or maybe there's a fear there. There's something else going on there. Anyway, so these are 4 explanations, and they're all not satisfying because we're trying to use words to explain. We're trying to use reason to explain. And what Kierkegaard is going to say, or Kierkegaard's pseudonym is going to say, is basically these are not the tool. These are not the right tools to use to explain this story. And also, this is a shocking story from the Bible. Like, we should be kind of freaked out about this, but it's sort of been whitewashed in a way or glanced over. And if it doesn't cause you some disturbance, like you're not getting something out of the story, like this is a pretty disturbing story, any way you read it, if you're inside the faith or outside the faith. So there's something here that should resonate more, and that's part of his complaints in the book too. People are saying, people are kind of glossing over this and not really treating it with the dignity that it deserves, because there's something interesting happening here. So this is just the start. So I'm hoping to do this in a few videos. I know this one is already over 20 minutes, and it is bite-sized Kierkegaard. So I'll end it here for today. But thank you for joining me this time, and I'll see you next time. Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, thank you.